Hi, Renee Tucci, AIFD here, and we're coming into the fall and harvest season. Everyone loves a beautiful fall wreath, so let's look at how to create one. So I wanted to focus today on gourds, and I have these wonderful styrofoam gourds that you can get from any big box craft store. And they're very lightweight and easy to work with, so they're perfect for this type of design. Now, they can be tricky to put onto a wreath though, of course, because there is no stem or any method with which to attach. So what we have to do is actually put a stem on the gourd. So what I like to work with, again, a 20 gauge wire. This is a what we call a stub wire. So it's a predetermined length of wire. And you can also use wire that comes on a spool, the spool wire, but I just happen to have the stub wire here. As far as what gauge wire you use, 20 gauge is my preferred gauge. You may also be comfortable with an 18 gauge wire that is a little bit heavier. I find that for my fingers a little hard to twist, and I want to make sure I get a good twist, so that's why I chose the 20 gauge wire. Now I'm going to want my gourds to lay so that their top or their face is showing. If you want to lay them on their side, depending on the style of the gourd, that's perfectly okay. Just, you might want to dry place the gourd first and see how it's going to lay, and that will determine how and where you put the wire or the stem in. So in this case, if I want it to be like this, I need the wire to go across, and because it's styrofoam, I'm able to really easily poke that wire through. It comes right out the other side, just like that. At this point, I take the wire and I bend it down so that they're parallel, and basically I gave it a stem or two little legs. So I'm going to take the wire, and the grapevine is wonderful because it has lots of nooks and crannies, and we are really able to work those wires straight through the grapevine and pull it tight so that it's really resting flush against the grapevine, and then you can come around to the back and twist. And when you twist those wires, you want to make sure that you're doing what's called cranking. So you actually leave the two tails separate and apart, and with your fingers at the binding point, twist really hard and make sure that that twist is going back into the item that you're attaching and not down the tails. That will create a really loose crank, and we want a tight crank so that that's not going to fall off. Like this, where it has a beautiful tip and then still a lot of material down below that you don't want to go to waste. If you cut that tip, do so as close as you can to this next lateral. Decide how long you want, and then cut it as close as you can to the lateral so that there's not a lot of evidence that you made that cut. You want to do it as smooth and as flush as possible so that it looks natural. That way we can still use this lower portion and not have it go to waste. I do like to use the tips as more of a decorative, sort of on the outer area that people can really see. And then I put the mid sections that have the blunter cut more in the middle so that they fill in and give the essence of the color and texture, but they're not the beautiful tips that everyone's really loving. The tips on this eucalyptus have such a beautiful curve to them, and they're perfect for helping to create the line in this design. Next up, I'm going to add just a simple touch of some Spanish moss. Now this is a dried material, and I really love the color of it for this season, and I also love that it somewhat tones down the saturated color of all the gourds. So I'm going to just dab a little bit of glue on the back of the moss. You do need to be careful. This glue that I'm working with, I have it melted down into a non-stick skillet, but it is an industrial type of glue. It's called pan melt glue, and it's made by the Smithers Oasis company. And if you happen to touch it, it's just like working with a glue gun. It will burn for a second and then it fades pretty quickly. But we'd rather skip that burning part if we can, right? So draping a little bit of glue on the moss, just like that, and tucking it around, pressing it into the grapevine to make sure we get good contact. So I'm going to take my feather and I'm going to just massage it against my thumb, just like that, and look at the curve I can get once I do that 2 or 3 times. Go ahead and cut the bottom off because we often don't need it as long as it is. Let me just make sure I know where I'm going to put this. I often like to do a pretend placement just so I'm sure. Run the feather through the glue and tuck it down in, allowing that beautiful curve to come out and around.